Welcome to the show, it's time to dive in, where stories unfold and journeys begin. Les is here to guide you through. In this world there's always something new. Feel the beat, the rhythm in the air. Laugh and learn, we got a vibe to share. Tune in, turn up, don't miss out. Less is made, that's what it's all about. Let's get started, light and bright. Less is made, it's your spotlight. Here we go, don't be late. Join the fun and celebrate.
Imagine being arrested by the FBI, and then a little while later, the same FBI is awarding you for your community service. Hi, I'm Les of the Less Is Made podcast, and I'm going to have my guest today, Ed Kressy, tell that very story. I know a little bit is going to be his road to dealing with drugs and his road to recovery and to becoming a best-selling author. So without further ado, I hope you join me in this journey of addiction to recovery with Ed Kressy. Hi, this is Les of the Less Is Made podcast. I have, I think, a guest that's going to have an incredible story to tell. Please introduce yourself so we can go on about telling your amazing story, sir.
Les, I'm Ed Kressy. Very grateful to be here. Thank you to you and your audience.
So it is Ed Kressy. Okay, I wanted to make sure I was pronouncing the name right. I thought it might have been like Kressy or Chrissy or Crescent. So I was right. That's good. Now, just because you will tell your story, you were being arrested from the FBI, and then turns around a couple years later or however long later, the FBI is actually wanting to give you an award. And during my research about you, you fell into a let's just say a dark part of your life, and you said it began with bullying. And my first question I want to ask is, what is the kind of bullying that you were dealing with at the time?
Yeah, Les, I was really just a weird kid. I love to read because the fantasy worlds I found in books were always far more doable for me than the world of reality that was around me. I was a very sensitive kid. I would cry quite easily when teachers yelled, when the school bus driver pulled over because the kids were too rowdy. I was very uncoordinated, couldn't compete in gym class or on the athletic fields. So I don't know about you, but where I went to junior high school, reading, crying, and being uncoordinated, not exactly a campaign platform, for most popular kid in class, right? So I
Yeah.
just felt a lot of ostracization, bullying, called names, picked on, and really just not fitting in. I couldn't fit in till I turned around 14 years of age. For the first time, I found it drinking, drinking, man. And
The
then,
sauce. Yeah.
yeah, the sauce, brother. And then I just felt, I felt like I could fit in. I felt that the other kids were laughing with me instead of
And
at
not at you.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
I want to ask you. So it started with alcohol, but how come you didn't try? As usually you see with kids that get bullied. How come it was drugs and not, let's say, like acting out, starting fights, or getting arrested and stuff like that? Why? Why that drug and alcohol?
Yeah, well, the arrests and the problems with the law that would come later on. The arrests much later in life. The trouble with the law, trouble with teachers, parents, that all came at a relatively early age. Fighting, I was always a real cowardly person. I was afraid to stand up for myself. And drinking was a way I could kind of puff myself out uh, and project that false facade of courage and confidence. But I
Yeah,
was
give me that liquid courage, right?
give me that liquid courage. So I was, I was really afraid to fight most of my life. And that's why I never got into many scraps or fist fights later on. Um, yeah, but the problems with the law, I would get not arrested, but pullovers, going driving ridiculous rates of speed on the country roads here where I grew up, drinking after dark out on the baseball field. I was caught vandalizing school property. So the consequences presented themselves from a relatively early age, 16, 17 years of age. But I didn't blame my poor choices for the consequences. I blamed
I,
the town that I grew up in. I blamed my parents. I blamed the
oh,
school, whatever. Any way I
yeah,
could
yeah.
project the blame off of myself onto my circumstances, not accept my own poor decisions, not accept that the fact that if I want to find the source of any problem I have, back then, today, whenever, if I want to find the source of any problem I have, I look in one place. You know where that place is?
Yourself, right?
Exactly, the mirror. I look in the
Yes,
mirror,
you got to
not
look in the
the source of my
mirror.
problems. Yeah, so I pulled I left home around 16, 17 years old, moved out to San Francisco. I grew up in Massachusetts, if I didn't mention.
I can tell. I hear the accent there, which is funny because I know that I was reading that you're in the San Francisco area, and I'm like, why am I getting more of like a Boston, northeastern, this accent from you, you know?
Right. Yeah, yeah, I did. I lived most of my adult life out in San Francisco, and now I'm back since the pandemic. I'm back here in Massachusetts.
Really? Which is kind of we're getting a little off topic, but like, why leave Cali to come back to here?
I learned, so I quit drug, jumping ahead. The 20 years I was addicted to drugs and booze. I turned my life around in 2007. The path that I was shown was the path of the three S's, what I call the three S's. I had a lot of mentors, a lot of people helped me. One guy in particular, Pat McGuire, Irish guy, grew up very rough childhood and youth in San Francisco. We call them gangs now. They were more like old time street gangs, I guess you would think
Yeah,
of.
yeah,
A lot of fists, a lot of getting in trouble that way. Pat became my spirit. Pat turned his own life around. Pat became my spiritual mentor, as did others, and Pat helped a lot of people. The one thing Pat taught me and others reinforced was the path of the three S's. The three S's: spirituality, service, and self improvement. Three S's.
yeah.
I found that no matter what I was doing, if whatever I'm doing fits one or more of those three S's, if whatever I'm doing is something that carries me along a spiritual path or is a way of improving myself or is of service to others, in general, I'm probably on the right path. To circle back to your question, I came out to Massachusetts for, I think it was a 1 week visit, March 2020. I remember I was on the plane or on the gate,
Oh man.
boarding gate, and there was a person wearing a mask. And I thought, oh, I heard of this in China, so, people
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
unfortunate. A few days later, we had, maybe not a few days, but a week or two later, we had, when I was here in Massachusetts, we had, the pandemic. And because of that S of service, I stayed out. I kept postponing my return to San Francisco. I worked from home at the time.
Yeah, yeah. Lucky you.
Yeah, yeah. So I postponed my stay to help my parents.
Hmm.
And then I'd always maybe had in the back of my mind that I would relocate here to Massachusetts. The point is that path of the three S's, that especially that service piece, led me to moving here to Massachusetts permanently in service to my parents, yes, but also in service to my spiritual path and my path of self improvement. Another thing Pat McGuire and others taught me is that there are these beings, right? Beings, call them angels, call them ascended masters, call them spirits, call them whatever label we want to
Yeah, I
apply.
got you.
Yeah, these beings help us when we're on spiritual paths. So I found through that path of spirituality, service, and self improvement that the angels, they truly help me, and that's there's more to the story, but in a nutshell, that's how I ended up back here in Massachusetts.
I got you. Now we're gonna get back into what we were talking about before we got sidetracked. So you said, and you started getting better in 2007. What event led you to believe that you hit rock bottom and there was no way to move up?
I don't know that there was any one event that led to rock bottom. I think in a general sense, I got to a point where I realized I had to either solve my problems through a spiritual path or not solve my problems at all. Those were kind of my two options. I discovered that life was never really going to get better. The best I could hope for was things not to get worse. I was living in this little flop house hotel up above a strip club, hadn't showered or brushed my teeth in months. I owned nothing, almost nothing except the clothes on my back, these tattered canvas Converse shoes held together with duct tape, filthy black Ben Davis slacks, a filthy black baseball jacket. The hotel room I lived in had a little sink in the corner. In this sink was where I would wash my clothes, ash my cigarettes, and urinate. I mean,
Ugh.
this was my life. We go on and on and
Yeah,
on.
yeah. Oh.
And I was in the psychosis. I'd gone to before. One of the turning points in my life. I'd gone to Bangkok. I used to do a lot of kickboxing, a lot of Muay Thai. I would
Oh,
train
wow.
for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
Wow.
trying to. I competed as an amateur. I was never any good because I was very cowardly, and I never
Yeah, but
respected.
you did this overseas where usually the Muay Thai and the kickboxing is more of a sport than it is here. And that's insane because I've seen videos. I know people that trained overseas and doing it, and it's like a totally different game than what you do at a local gym here. It's just a totally different way they do things. That's insane that you were able to do that.
It was a wonderful opportunity. I trained with the professionals out there for a short while, about a week or so. I was not a professional, far from it, but it was for me. It was more like a fantasy camp. Wonderful experience. I lived and trained in a place called the International Muay Thai School. While I was there, I had a friend and a roommate, a guy named Tariq Malik. Tariq was he was just a nice guy from he was of Middle Eastern descent. He was Muslim and he was from France. He lived in France.
Wow.
Tariq and we were friends for the week or so that I was training at that Muay Thai camp. Tariq turned out to be a 9/11 hijacker who had actually been an undercover counterterrorism operative who'd infiltrated the Al Qaeda terrorist cells. And furthermore, I myself was an undercover counterterrorism operative, genetically engineered since before birth by the FBI. You know, the point is less. These were all the methamphetamine psychosis delusions. Tariq. To be honest, I still today believe that Tariq had something to do with counterterrorism or something to do with that. I can't prove it, but
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
a lot to be said for your gut. And you can look at a picture of Tariq and you can look at a picture of this 9/11 terrorist and you can say, well, maybe the two of this, they might look similar. The point is, my poor choices leading to methamphetamine addiction,
Jeez.
leading to methamphetamine psychosis,
Yeah.
that created this
Wow.
nightmarish, delusional, psychotic scenario in which I was constantly surveilled and hounded and harassed by the FBI, by my former employers, by my family, friends. The whole world had, not the whole world, but there was a global conspiracy targeting me in my mind, in my
Yeah.
methamphetamine
Wow.
mind. And that was that led to this really rapid decline starting in 2003, where I threw away a wonderful career in biotechnology with a firm that went on to be the number one best company in America to work for.
Wow.
I threw away my home that I owned, a beautiful home in San Francisco, all my relationships, a motorcycle, my wonderful dog. I put all of it in a
Dogs.
crack pipe, smoked it away, and ended up in that scenario that we just talked about in that hotel room up above a strip club. The
Now, I want to pick apart. Did you actually go overseas and train in kickboxing, or that
Oh
just
yeah, that part was
okay?
true. No, I did because with the psychosis and with the delusions, there were so many aspects of reality. So yeah, I was in Bangkok. There was a Tariq. There are photos of him. Yes, maybe you could say he resembles a hijacker.
Yeah, yeah. That's beside the point. I just wanted to make sure because that's crazy. So
Yeah.
now let's come to my next question. You said you were arrested by the FBI. What were you being arrested for? Because the FBI, that's got to be something very heavy in order for them to be involved.
Yeah, I used to go into the FBI office high on meth. This was back in the day when you could still go to the FBI offices. So
Wow.
I'd be on meth, high, going to their office and submitting complaints. You know, dear FBI, please stop following me. FBI, please help me find out who is following me. Now, I wasn't threatening or anything like that, but I was definitely a person, a very troubled person presenting
Yeah.
myself to the FBI. And
Jeez.
when you go there, back in the day when you could go there, you got to show your ID. You know,
Hmm.
they knew who I was. I wasn't just some guy, conspiracy beliefs in some apartment somewhere. I was that, but I was also someone
Yeah.
who was known to the FBI. Basically, to answer your question, what happened was I pushed things too far. There was a bench warrant out for my arrest. The FBI had no choice but to arrest me. So while my arrest was for failure to appear, which is can seem like a pretty watered down reason to be arrested by the FBI, to me, my failure was much greater. I had failed to serve society. I
Yeah.
had failed to serve my communities. In fact, I was a serious drain on society. A lot of opportunities came my way. I had the opportunity. I was sent to college. I graduated college. I got that job that I was given that job I told you about. A wonderful family, so many people in my life. So many opportunities were presented to me. Yet, what did I do with them? Well, I ended up arrested by the FBI because, and the bench warrant, the failure to appear, the reason that was out there was because I had broken into my family's home to steal for meth money. The
Oh,
same
wow.
family that took me in when I was 16 years old. I broke into their home. I ultimately failed the failure, the FBI's arrest for failure to appear on a bench warrant to me represented a much greater failure to serve society. And that's a reason I'm very, very grateful to the FBI and to many others in law enforcement for they knew who I was, but they gave me a second chance, which allowed me to ultimately do. And what I'd love to talk about, if you and your audience want to hear about it, is the
Did your
service work that I do in prisons.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna get into. Is you wrote a book about the recovery, and I kind of want to hear that story a little, and it's at the best and crisp way you can tell it.
Yeah.
So okay? So we're gonna reset it. You're 2007. You realized that you need to make a change. How did this lead to you becoming I think it's a best-selling author, or to being an author with your book?
I'd always wanted to be an author. I mentioned I loved reading when I
Yeah,
was
well, as a
a kid.
kid.
Yeah. So my dream was to be an author. I allowed my dream to be derailed by my poor choices leading to addiction. When I got clean, when people helped me to get clean back in 2007, that path of the three S's, I applied myself to writing. I wrote thousands of pages. I worked very hard. I wrote screenplays. I wrote novels. I wrote short
Wow.
stories, essays, articles, whatever. I would just write and write and write, attempting to evolve as a writer. Fortunately, I published a few articles in the Washington Post, a few little,
Wow.
not, yeah, they're not great articles or anything,
Yeah,
but
but
I'm
still.
still, and I'm proud of the fact that my little articles advocate for people in recovery. My articles advocate for people with criminal histories. That's what I'm most proud of. I wrote a book. I was on, they called it the Silicon Valley Tour. I was with a group called the Five Ventures, which the Five Ventures is still around. The Five Ventures serves incarcerated people, teaching them skills for entrepreneurism,
Okay.
them employment skills. I was part of the Five Ventures, and we had this opportunity to go on this little van through Silicon Valley. We met people like Sheryl Sandberg, the executive at Facebook. You know Sheryl Sandberg,
I know the name, yeah.
yeah, remarkable woman. We met Jeffrey Weiner, the CEO of LinkedIn at the time.
Wow.
But we got these individuals and their companies so amazing in their support of life transformations for incarcerated people. When I was on this van, sitting right behind me was this, and I should say this all came. I give so much credit to the people because they deserve the credit. I did take initiative. I took initiative. I applied myself to my life transformation. I worked very hard. I volunteered in service to others. Those three S's, three-letter S's. Getting back to that van, sitting right behind me was this dude, Seth Godin. You know Seth Godin? Seth Godin, a very successful business writer, and in fact, his writing and his work sort of transcends business
Yeah,
into.
I've heard his name on a couple of podcasts. I've heard him speak on it. That's where I think on a more business type podcast, I heard him talk about that. So I do know the name. I'm not really familiar with his work, but I know the name. I'm listening to him on some podcasts that I listen to myself. So that's where I know the name from.
Wonderful, wonderful individual. Seth, wonderful for so many reasons. Chief among them to me is his support for incarcerated people transforming their lives. That's why Seth was sitting right behind me on that van. And the Five Ventures was started by an incredible woman named Catherine Hoke, who still does this type of work. And Seth, I think, was Catherine's mentor. Anyway, I turn around, Seth Godin sitting right behind me, one of the more successful business or authors in general in modern times. I said to him, Seth, I want to be a writer. I want to be a writer. I want to write a book, something. Les, I don't even remember the exact words that Seth Godin said to me, but he planted this seed, this little crystal of an idea in my mind. And
Mm-hmm.
Seth believed in me. A lot of people believed in me through the course of my recovery and transformation. The next morning after that van ride, I got up at 4 a.m. or something and started writing this book. I wrote 26 drafts, not every draft starting from a blank page, but several drafts, just starting from beginning to end. And then I combed through it. I spent a ridiculous amount of money. We could do a whole podcast on how not to spend how to get a book without spending any
Yeah,
real money.
yeah.
But I wanted to achieve my dream, yes. Yet more so, I even wanted to be of service to others, which is what the book ended up being in some small way. The book is called My Addiction and Recovery. Not the most creative title, but
Yeah, yeah.
story. The book is about my transformation thanks to the FBI, thanks to incarcerated people, thanks to many, many others. We ended up, the book published in April 2020.
Oh
So
wow.
dreams,
Right.
yeah, best-selling author,
Yeah.
going book signing tours. Okay, well now we get the pandemic.
Yeah. Kind
Um,
of just put a hold on everything.
put a little bit of a hold on it. However, it worked out very well because I've got a plan and the universe has a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Not usually, always the universe's plan is better than mine.
Yeah, so to speak, yes.
Yeah, well, that's what I came to believe anyway. Along the way, thanks to Catherine Hoke and Seth Godin and many others, I had done some volunteering in a place called Pelican Bay State Prison.
Yeah, no, I know a lot about Pelican Bay. It's from the movies and research. It's like it's California, the state of California's like biggest like maximum security prison, one of their biggest there.
I
From
would I would say, yeah, I would say it's the one of the more notorious maximum security prisons
yeah,
in probably the country, if not
yeah,
just California, along with Sing Sing and Folsom and some others.
and Leavenworth.
Leavenworth, Angola. Yeah, exactly. The I spent 6 days volunteering in Pelican Bay, and I spent thanks to Five Ventures and some other individuals, I spent time volunteering in county jails and other facilities. In Pelican Bay, the men I worked with had all been convicted of violent crimes,
Oh yeah,
like murder in many cases. These men were all gang members, or most of them. I don't think you would really be in their situation in Pelican Bay unless you were a validated gang member. These men in Pelican Bay have been labeled by society as being among the very worst of the very worst.
yeah,
And these men, some of the most beautiful human beings I've ever met. Not because of the things that they've done, certainly, but because of how they're applying themselves to their life transformations. I heard that they shared their stories with me. They allowed me to get to know them. They showed me the light of spiritual and personal transformation. Because of my experience in Pelican Bay and with the Five Ventures and some other places and people, instead of selling my book, we began donating my book. We donated, I think, 1,200 hard copies to various facilities, starting with 100 or so copies to Pelican Bay.
wow.
Today, my book is available on 500,000 tablets, which are used throughout the correctional system in the United
Wow.
States. Yeah, there's this wonderful group of people, a nonprofit called Edovo. Edovo, remarkable work. They were kind enough to get my book uploaded onto their content platform, which is available on tablets in prisons and jails throughout the U.S. We were getting about 900 downloads a month. I think it's trailed off a little bit. I'm not sure why.
But
Uh,
still,
yeah.
900 a month is not bad. Hell, I wish I can get that with my own podcast.
Hey, well, there's, the thing, we had we're a few copies shy, maybe a couple hundred copies shy of 7,000 downloads since August. And I like to think my book is doing some small thing. I like to think that incarcerated readers of my book are getting some small piece of the puzzle to their own life transformation.
Yeah.
That so many people helped me. And that, when I go to sleep each night, knowing that my book might be helping incarcerated people, that to me is worth more than any book signing or any movie deal. Or, I mean, those things would be nice. Yet, when my life on this earth, when my journey in this world is through, as it will be someday, not until decades from now, but at some point, my journey on this earth will end. I believe the three S's, spirituality. I believe that there's a next stage to my journey.
Yeah.
When that time comes, no book deal, no movie deal, no book signing, no nothing like that is really going to be worth that much
No.
when I
But
progress on.
but the legacy you're planning on leaving behind in the correctional Department of Corrections, I guess, prisons or whatever, it's going to be your legacy because people are still going to know who you are even long after, God forbid you leave this earth
That's an
before your
excellent
time.
way to put it. Yeah, absolutely. Legacy. Whether we believe in the afterlife or legacies or some combination of variation, yeah, that's a great way to put it. A legacy. I feel very fortunate. I was able to achieve my dream of writing a book, and the book is of some small degree of service to our incarcerated brothers and sisters. And it's thanks to incarcerated people, and it's thanks to the FBI, and thanks to many in law enforcement, and many others too. But those two
Yeah,
groups, I call them humans in blue uniforms. Humans in blue uniforms. Law enforcement, and in Pelican Bay, they happen to wear blue uniforms. In
no,
many facilities, it's orange. And of course, the FBI doesn't necessarily wear blue uniforms. But those two groups, the humans in blue uniforms, people in law enforcement, people in prison, they taught me that behind bars and behind badges beat the hearts of human beings. Beautiful
that's true.
lesson. And to come from a place, being in some little hotel room above a strip club, smoking meth, urinating in a sink, to come from a place like that, thanks to a lot of help, to being able to be of service to law enforcement and to our incarcerated brothers and sisters. It's a beautiful way that path of the three
You,
S's
you
has
know,
shown.
it's like somehow you figured out how to help all sides of the legal system, so to speak.
Well, there is absolutely. I would just maybe say both sides because there's a victim side too,
Yeah,
which
that's what I mean. The victim side, the law enforcement side, you seem to manage to capture lightning in a bottle because you always hear, you know, one side either you like law enforcement or you like the people that are in prison. You happen to kind of manage to get both sides to kind of work together and make life better or whatever. It seems like with your book and how you're going about it. I don't have a lot of time at this same, but I want to ask you, what is like your writing process?
the writing process is a process of struggle. Is struggle. I learned that the most important thing is discipline. Well, the most important thing is the spirit for me is a spiritual belief. When I was writing my book, and to some extent my articles, I was putting forth parts of myself that I was very afraid to put forth. And not just my addiction. I still had these beliefs about Tariq Malik and the FBI and 9/11, and I still would entertain thoughts of the FBI being after me. This was years, a decade
Yeah,
after I quit meth. So I'm going to write this book. The FBI is going to cut. These are the beliefs. the FBI is going to come and get me. They don't, there's a conspiracy. So I had to have these spiritual beliefs to put myself out there. And that's on top of the beliefs of, what people are going to think of me, or the temptation to fall prey to beliefs that what others might think of me is more important than expressing myself. This is my personal attitude. I don't mean to push it on anybody else.
No.
So the spiritual beliefs were the most important, and then the dedication. Writing for me is one thing that, if there are certain things in life where if we do them every day, we have to get better.
Yeah.
The way nature works, it's like lifting weights. If I do these bicep curls every day, and
You're gonna have big arms.
the arms can't not get bigger. Yeah, and with lifting weights, you got to factor in recovery and nutrition and many other
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
But the general theory is that writing is something that if we apply ourselves every day, we have to get better.
Yeah,
Like meditation. You don't want to slap the word better quote on something like meditation, but we're by and large going to get value out of writing if we do it every day, like meditation. And I guess the most important lesson I learned probably is to write a book that you love. Write a
yeah.
book you love, because if you love it, you're going to want it to be successful.
Exactly.
You're going to find a way to make it successful in whatever way that the universe designs.
Now, before we go, where can people maybe find your book? Where can they find you on any social medias or whatever? And I will make sure I put all this in show notes for myself so people can find you. So this kind of let me know where they can find you at. And I think you.
Okay. CARCERATED.org. www.un-carcerated.org.
Okay.
It's all donation. I don't make any money. You get it for $5. You get a good book. Your $5 goes to fund Uncarcerated. We're a 501c3, and we deliver the recovery message in jails and prisons.
Oh, that's awesome. Not even now you're selling your book, but it's also a donation where you don't get any, but they get the book and you go to a good cause to help people out. Wow, you went from being a selfish man to a selfless man, it seems like.
In some ways, yes. Thank you for saying that. It's really thanks to a belief in spiritual principles, dedication to following those spiritual principles, and a lot of help from a lot of people. The Pat McGuires, the Catherine Hoax, the FBI people, the incarcerated people, the many, many others who came into my life, they're the ones who deserve all the credit.
And you know what? It takes a community to make the world better. As they say, everyone needs help.
Well said, my friend.
Well, thank you for joining me for this interview. I can't wait to get this up and running, and I'll make sure everyone can find you and maybe donate to your book.
Fantastic. I appreciate that very much, Les. Thank you, and thank your audience. To your audience, if I could say one last thing.
Go for it, please.
Your audience, I understand you have many, many options for how you spend your time. There are a lot of things you could be doing. For you to be listening to this podcast right now, thank you so much. I hope that you're getting some small degree of value from what you're hearing. I know you are from Les, and I hope you are from me as well.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on all platforms. You can either look me up by my name, Leslie Madewell, or my photography company, Madewell Art Photography. I know I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, now known as X. If you want to buy my book, it is on Amazon. Just go to Amazon, check out the book section, type in my name, Leslie Madewell, and my book, Pathway to Vengeance, will pop up. And I will be leaving a link in the show notes in every episode. And if you want to leave me a review or comment on any of the platforms that you listen to podcasts, please do that. I will appreciate it. And I hope I see you on the next episode.